Hi everybody, this is Father Warner, and today we're going to reflect on the Gospel text of Saturday in the fourth week of Lent, and the text is taken from John chapter 7 verses 40 to 50. And I'd like to first read the text for you. When they heard these words, some in the crowd said, "This is really the prophet." Others said, "This is the Messiah." But some asked, "Surely the Messiah does not come from Galilee, does he? Has not the scripture said that the Messiah is descended from David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David lived?" So there was a division in the crowd because of him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. Then the temple police went back to the chief priests and Pharisees, who asked them, "Why did you not arrest him?" The police answered, "Never has anyone spoken like this." Then the Pharisees replied, "Surely you have not been deceived too, have you? Has any one of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd, which does not know the law, they are accursed." Nicodemus, who had gone to Jesus before and who was one of them, asked, "Our law does not judge people without first giving them a hearing to find out what they are doing, does it?" They replied, "Surely you are not from Galilee, are you? Search and you will see that no prophet is to arise from Galilee." The Gospel of the Lord. So here is the logic. If the Pharisees or the authorities did not believe in Jesus, then those who actually believed in him were now considered, according to them, accursed. Sounds like a matter of sour grapes. In fact, I think it's a little matter of bitter grapes. Why do I say it? Because there is intense bitterness against Jesus. And anyone who even remotely defended Jesus is now being attacked by the Pharisees. You can see that they have to face the wrath of the Pharisees. We saw that today in the temple guards. We saw that in the case of Nicodemus. So we've come now to confrontation time. The Pharisees were quite clear. They were not going to sit aside like sheep with a secret sorrow and watch Jesus carry on. They can now well be described as bulls in a china shop. Why? Because they could not stop their anger, and they were so angry with Jesus that they were ready to pick up any stone to throw at him. If they didn't find a stone, I think they would have even torn down the very temple they loved to get a stone and stone Jesus. Am I exaggerating? Not at all. Read the Gospel of John very, very carefully. In John's Gospel, there is a plot to kill Jesus, and this plot is progressive, it thickens. Today's Gospel is one such example of this great plot to kill Jesus. Where are we? Let's position ourselves in this scripture text. It is the seventh day of what we call the Feast of the Tabernacles, or the Feast of the Booth. Yesterday in the Gospel of John, we saw that Jesus arrives somewhere in the middle of this festival. On the last day of this festival, the priests would take water from the pool of Siloam and walk around the altar 7 times, and then finally they would pour the water on the altar. And the crowd would have in their left hand a bunch of myrtle and willow leaves or branches which were tied together with palm branches, and in their right hand they would have lemon branches. Why was all of this done? It was done as a sign of the celebration also of the harvest. And Jesus, when this water is poured by the chief priests on the altar, declares quite publicly, as we saw yesterday, that he is the living water, and anyone who believes in him should drink of this living water. And this causes a tremendous stir. Why? Because we see, and now listen to the words, we see that many, and the word is many, Many begin to believe that he is either a prophet or a Messiah, but some begin to doubt him because of his origins, from where he comes. The majority now have begun to look at Jesus as a prophet or a Messiah. But because Jesus makes this statement, this now becomes the last nail in his coffin. In fact, it becomes the nail that goes straight into his palm. The Pharisees realized that Jesus now was more than just a rabble-rouser that they thought him to be. They realized he had great influence over the people because, as I said earlier, the people saw him as a Messiah and many saw him as a prophet. And Jesus now had to be stopped at all cost, even if it meant that they handed him over to the Romans to be crucified. And here's what I want to say something to you now. Hate can be an awful thing. Many of us think that, we just get angry. And as I've said this before, hate can be an awful thing. In the case of the Pharisees, their hatred led them to murder when they consented to the death of Jesus on the cross. Remember, on Good Friday, the words are, "Crucify him, crucify him." When Nicodemus suggested that they give Jesus a trial, much less even a fair trial, they begin to call him a disdainful Galilean. They now cannot even see goodness among themselves and among their own people. I want to ask you today to really look into your heart. Do we still have the heart that Jesus gave us, a heart of flesh? Or has hate made our hearts into hearts of stone? We are very often, as I said, embarrassed by sins of the flesh. Are we ever embarrassed by the sins of our muscle, the heart being that muscle? Have a blessed day, and let us learn to forgive.